G'day everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Australian Property Investment Podcast. Everyone, I'm loving the messages that we're getting. It's a real showing of support from our community of listeners. So first of all, I want to say thank you very much for tuning in. Today's episode, I'm not going to say it's tooting my own horn. In fact, it's very much championing someone that's read besides my mum, that's read my book. I'm really proud. Thank you, Tahirih, and my team. But you may know, if you've been following our journey, that I released the Happy Home Loan Handbook, which is very much how to get your loan approved, how to buy your dream home, and how to get on with life. Because we know home ownership levels are falling to over 20-year lows. We know how incredibly hard it is to get into the property market, which is what inspired me to put pen to paper and write a book about how we can help more Australians get into the market and eventually go on to buy and scale their property investment portfolio. So I was very thrilled when over one weekend I got an email saying how much the book made an impact on someone's home buying journey. And I just thought, damn, like that is exactly what I set out to achieve. And I really love when people reach out when they've read the book and give us some honest feedback. And to Tahirih Mclaren Brown, I want to say thank you very much for your kind words.
You're welcome. Yeah, it really did make an impact. And I've never emailed an author before either. So I was like, this book was so good, I need to tell him. Because when I was reading it, I could see that you had written it to help people. So I thought, I'm just going to flick you an email and say thank you.
Nice. Thank you very much. And look what it's done. And that's what I think what we said when we called on the phone was like, just that ripple effect of like when you reach out to me, I was like, hey, would you mind jumping on and sharing your story? Like, I didn't think even you flinch. You're like, no, I'd love to. And now this story is going to champion someone else's journey as well. And it's that I talk about the ripple effect getting big, but domino effect. It's going to help the next person. You've even said within your own circle of friends, you're kind of telling people and sharing the book as well. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. We're going to go through your journey. We're going to go through what got you from renting to owning and every step along that way, emotionally and financially. Yes. But like I said, full disclosure, you're not a client and you had your own broker, and that's cool. That's what we're about here. So for me, I'm like, that's why I said we're not tooting our own horn here. It's very much saying everyone's going to have their team of professionals who they were introduced and worked with. The book was very much a conduit and a resource that helped you along that journey. Yeah, cool. So as I understand it, your accent, I think you're sounding like an Aussie, but there's a New Zealand twang in there. So you've been in Australia for the last couple of years.
Yes.
This is home. Now you're definitely putting down roots because you bought home. You're home here. Miles is your partner who you mentioned, yin and yang energy. You're the marketing energy. He's the numbers energy, which is exactly like how it is in our household as well. So love to learn about your journey, what brought you to this country, and how you guys have enjoyed the journey to call Australia home.
Yes, yeah. So I grew up in a small town in New Zealand called Picton, which is at the very top of the South Island. And as soon as I turned 18 and I had finished school, I went to university. My mum said that we had to get out of the town because the hills trapped us in. And that town, like really, there were only a couple of us who went to university in my year. We used to call Picton University was the supermarket and the muscle factory. So like mum was like, you have to get out. And then I studied tourism management and Māori business at university in Wellington. But I'd always had the goal of moving to the UK just to do my OE. I'd never been there. I think my mum had done it, so I just wanted to do it. So once I finished uni, I got a job and I just saved for a couple of years. And then I moved to London and I thought I'll just live there for 2 years, and I ended up being there for 6.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was lucky because my grandparents actually immigrated from the UK, so I got an ancestry visa, which was great. So, I worked there and just travelled a lot. I think this is probably an important part of my story as well, is that I haven't had lots of money behind me, and I have had times where I've been broke a lot. So obviously university. And then I saved all my money and I travelled for 5 months before I got to the UK, and I entered London with £1,000, which is not enough to survive in London, which I didn't know at the time, but anyway, I made it.
Ignorance is bliss.
Yeah. So then I worked in London, spent lots of money travelling, and then I kind of settled. And I ended up actually quitting my job to start a business in mindfulness coaching for anxious overthinkers. So I went through it like I worked part-time and then went full-time in my business, which failed miserably. So
That's all right. You've come out mentally stronger for it.
Yeah. So they actually I ended up in debt from that, which I luckily had. From then I got into freelance marketing because I didn't have a job and I didn't have a business and I had an Amex debt. So I got into freelance marketing. And I was with Miles, who's my partner at the time, and I just kind of got sick of living in London, really. Like I was over living in a big city. We'd done COVID there, which was quite lame. And then, we both just wanted to give Australia a crack, really. I've been to Sydney for a long weekend in 2014 with my sister to go to a Michael Bublé concert.
Nice one. Entertainment centre?
Yeah.
I think I was there.
He had a cannon of love heart confetti. I remember that. Yeah. It's like, oh my God. So I thought, well, I liked Sydney when I was there for 3 days. Miles had also been before, and we just thought, well, who cares? Like, if it doesn't work out, we'll just leave. So, we moved over here 2 years ago, and we luckily stayed with family friends. Then we looked around for suburbs that we'd like to live in, and we went to Manly on a super sunny day, and the market was on, and our friend gave us the grand tour, and we were like, we have to live here. Yeah. So, and also we were moving to Australia to live an Australian lifestyle, like be by the beach. We didn't want to move from London to live in the middle of another city. And we love it here. I started surfing, which is cool. I suck, but I love going out into the water. Most people suck, I think. And joined, I play hockey, so I joined a hockey team, Manly hockey team. And we just settled in really well, and I did freelance marketing for a bit. And then I just decided I wanted to meet more people and go into an office. So now I work in marketing for an employment services company, and we have lots of different businesses, and we have partnerships with First Nations businesses. So we do employment, education, training, community development in regional and remote Australia. So I get to work in that First Nations space, which is really important to me because I started doing Māori business in New Zealand. So when I came to Australia, I really wanted to work in First Nations development and empowerment. So incredible. Here I am.
Isn't it amazing how the dots get connected?
Yeah.
That's what I say when you look backwards on your journey, how you can connect the dots. And you think that door opened to get you to that point and that point, and you go, right. I think when people take control of where they want to go and they really want to be able to put down roots, that's what I get. That's really a big part of home ownership, which is I think we're ready to put down roots because people, and you probably see this in Australian culture a lot, is you somewhat feel, inferior is a hard word, but all my research in my book says it as well. People feel a little bit inferior about renting because we're such a the great Australian dream here is like buy your home and you haven't really made it. Whereas, I listen to a lot of Dave Ramsey stuff out of America. He's like, hey, renting's just a time in your life till you're ready to buy. So don't worry about, if you're renting at the moment, because we've got plenty of clients that are rent investors as well, but even if you want to buy your own home, renting will serve you for a time in your life until you're actually financially ready and you know where you want to buy as well. Because you would never have known where you wanted to buy until you tried the neck of the woods.
Yeah, and I think as well, because I'm 33 and obviously I spent all my money travelling and living in London and all that kind of stuff, but most of my friends stayed in New Zealand, and so they're all homeowners already. They have dogs, they have kids. And so I also felt like, what am I doing? I had to keep reminding myself, like, you spent 6 years like traveling Europe, you had really great experiences, but you definitely feel like, what am I doing with my life? Like, everybody owns a house at home and I'm still renting with student loan. So it's quite like that.
There's nothing that we can say like, comparison's the thief of joy. You can say all that. It doesn't make some of that pain less though. It's like, it makes sense, but still it's like you have a missing part. You go, I just want that security as well to call somewhere myself, and you see other people being able to move on with their lives because they've got their own home, isn't it? Excellent. So take me through at what point did this penny drop for you going, we could or we should be able to buy? And then everyone, if you listen to the podcast regularly, you say the market rewards action takers and decision makers. So at what point did you go, we now need to take some action?
Yeah, so Miles and I decided to speak to a mortgage broker in February. So I don't know if you're doing dates for this, but it's now May. Yeah. So it was not that long ago. But we decided, I don't know, I'd heard it somewhere, I can't remember where, but that you should speak to a mortgage broker straight away, even if you're not ready, you don't have a full deposit ready, just so you can find out like what your borrowing power is, how much more you need to save, like all that kind of stuff. So we went into a conversation with our mortgage broker and just gave her all our information, how much we were on with salary, which I'm happy to talk about if you want to know numbers, what we were looking for. And we actually thought that we were going to have to buy an investment property outside of Sydney. That was our plan because we didn't think we could afford in Sydney, or maybe buy in Western Sydney, because I really like real estate. Like I like watching real estate shows. My YouTube algorithm is just as home design, like home tours. And so I was already, once we kind of started talking about it, I was like I found this really nice place in like Orange. And I was like, oh, we could buy this house in Orange. And Miles is like, we haven't even spoken to a mortgage broker yet. So we went into that conversation just thinking like, okay, what can we do? So we chatted to her, gave her all our information, and then she came back with like a full breakdown of like, okay, this is your borrowing power. If you got a loan that was worth this much, this is how much your repayments would be. And she did that for like 5 different stages of a loan. And we looked at that and thought, oh, we can afford to buy in around our area, in the Northern Beaches somewhere. And because I already had quite a good idea about how much things were because I was living on realestate.com. And so that actually really shifted things for us quite quickly, because we thought, oh, we can afford to buy now because we've got a big enough deposit. Because Miles is an accountant, some banks, I don't know if the cut's the right word, but they get rid of the lender's mortgage insurance.
Yep.
So then we could have a 10% deposit without having to pay that insurance as well, which was good. And we just thought, oh, we might actually be able to do this. And what we ideally wanted to do was to buy somewhere to live in, but we thought, oh, we'll get an investment property and we'll be able to like rent that out for a few years and see what happens after that. And we had actually had it in our heads that the ideal timing for us would be to re-sign with our lease for another year, which is June to end of May. And then we would buy an investment property, we'd get rid of our lease, have no rent, buy an investment property, get renters into it, and then we were planning to go overseas for 3 months to do some travel. So we're like, perfect. Obviously that hasn't happened.
It's not happening.
Yeah, but after that we were like, oh, we could afford to buy now in the area that we want, maybe not close to where we are, because the apartment we're in at the moment was worth way more than we could afford, but maybe just up the beaches a little bit more in DY. And then we can go and live in it, and we'll ideally move out when our lease is up. So that kind of really got lit a fire under our butts a fire under my butt, because I'm really impatient as well. So I just get moving on things. So that's kind of where it all started. And I think what was also really helpful was seeing the all those numbers, and I'm not a numbers person, but all those numbers about like, okay, this is what your monthly repayment would approximately be if you got this size loan for this property. We were like, I first looked at it and thought, oh my God, that's way more than what we're paying in rent. And then we looked at our incomes and we're like, actually, we can totally afford that, and it's so worth it to even for the first couple of years to be putting a lot more. And Miles had a really good perspective, because he was like, paying your mortgage is like investing your money. So like you have to think of it as not like, oh, we're paying an extra, I think it's like 1,800 or 1,900 a month on top of what we were paying in rent. Don't think of that as like money gone. Yeah. It's like it's investment. Yeah, it is. It's a savings. Yeah. And so that kind of, I was like, oh, this is doable.
So let's think about this. So you're renting, the now mortgage is, he says, close to like $1,900 additionally. Do the rough math on that. It's about $500 a week on top of what you're paying.
Yeah.
But you've got into a habit of already paying that rent, right? Yeah. So the extra $500 you have to find, and it's like, right, you're probably saving a smidge of that perhaps as well.
Yeah. I think we were doing quite well with our savings. But so I looked at the savings that I was putting away and thought, oh, well, that's cutting my savings in half a month. Yeah. But I'm still going to have not as much money to go on holidays. Yeah. But it's going to go into repaying the mortgage.
And the decision to buy now, you could have kept waiting and saving for a deposit.
Yes.
But you said, let's get into the market now.
Yes.
Why that decision as opposed to wait? So you save more for deposit, for example.
Yes. So this is when your book there's a table in that book that shows somebody on an average salary in Sydney and how much they might save and the interest on their savings compared to how much the property prices increase over that time. And it was really like, you're never going to save more than what the property prices are increasing at the moment. Yeah. So I saw that because there's a plot twist to the story as Miles goes to the UK for work. And so I saw that. And I was like, okay. And we also, Miles as an accountant loves spreadsheets, and he made a spreadsheet. They just make my brain like curl up. But yeah, he made a spreadsheet about like how much we'd have to save to get to like a 20% deposit, and like how much time that would take. And we kind of compared that with, and then he also had, I don't even know how it works, but anyway, with the current and predicted increases in property prices, which is what your table does without having to make a spreadsheet. And we were like, oh, it's not, by the time we save, like if we saved for another year and we got a 20% deposit, it wouldn't even be a 20% deposit because the house prices have increased so much. And I've kind of said this to some friends who aren't ready to buy yet but are saving for a deposit. And they're like, oh, my God, that's not what I want to hear. But I'm like, don't feel bad about it because I think the mindset is buy when you can buy. So just buy what you can buy when you can buy it. And that's how we looked at it. And we were like, right, let's try and buy. Like we've got a 10% deposit. We can get rid of this lender's mortgage insurance. We should just start looking, and like this is our price range, and we're just going to crack into it basically.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So someone following your journey goes, hey, you weren't flush with cash, so you travelled.
Yes.
You said you kind of had to get back on your feet.
Yeah.
Then you're renting. We know how hard it is to rent to save while you're renting. But you've somehow managed to pull together a deposit.
Yes.
Which is my big question going,
yes.
How did you save for this deposit?
Yes, totally. So I am very honest about this and say that I am the benefactor of intergenerational wealth, but it's not my family. So for me, I started saving as soon as I got into Australia, but then because I had my own business, I had to pay like $9,000 in tax. I was like, no, the government's taking my savings.
Yeah, I get you. So that number just keeps going up and up and up.
That's another reason why I was like, I just want a normal job. Like, I do not want to track my finances and pay tax because it just really feels like the government's taking money off you.
When you don't even see it when you're salaried, it's different.
Yeah, it's
but
so
when
different.
You're self-employed and you've got to pay yourself, you really feel, I guess that's why self-employed people do everything they can to minimize tax because you can feel it firsthand how much tax you're actually paying.
Yeah.
We pay a lot of tax, payroll. What do we pay? We pay team, super. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah. So anyway, I got into this job and I just started saving there. And then Miles is also very good at saving. He just doesn't buy anything, which is not something that's not me. And then so Miles's parents both worked in the finance industry. And so they were really good from when the kids, not were young, but when they could, to start putting money into investments.
Awesome.
And so over his, I don't know when they started, but over his probably teenage years to now, he's had money going into investment accounts and building up, and they've really taught him, like, you know, I'd sit down once a year and say, okay, what are we going to do with your money? And I'm from, like, my mum's a teacher, my dad's a builder. My family just didn't know anything about investing. Like, I thought it was like, well, you're throwing your money away and risking it for everything. So I never had investments. I've never had investments. And so that's kind of where, so Miles had his own savings, and then he had this investment account of money that ended up having to, like, that got us up to a 10% deposit. So yeah, really. And I used to, honestly, because I grew up in a family with not much money, I used to be quite resentful for the fact that, like, Miles was able to have this money, and he just basically had, like, free money in a bank that he didn't even work for. And now I look at it and I think, if I had that if I have children and I have that opportunity, like, I would 110% do that for them as well. Yeah,
exactly. I think you and I are similar, which is, didn't necessarily come from money. We didn't have that, we're kind of paycheck to paycheck, but weren't flush with cash as a household. That's something and Bernadette, her family, was so open with money, to the point that they're showing how much their mortgage is worth when we're dating. I was like, I don't think I need to know all this information. But no. And they were very open and transparent around how much their debt were, money was, savings was. I think that's where, again, I talk about yin and yang energy. It's probably what opposites attract sometimes for you and Miles, and same with Bernie and I. And so, same thing when we had our two daughters, non-negotiable, like every week there's money that gets added to their savings account. And now look at how much they're sitting on from a savings perspective. And they're 3 and 5. I'm like, they've got more savings than me. And a lot of adults that I meet as well. And that's just going to continue to compound. That money can only ever be used for property. It's exactly this kind. They've created an unfair advantage. So imagine you work with Miles, but you're trying to compete with Miles for that property. That would always win.
Yeah,
that house would always win, because they've got and it's compounded over such a long period of time that it just gets a life of its own, where it just grows.
Yeah, I think if I was in a relationship with somebody who didn't have that, then, like, looking at if we had the same sort of savings, then it would definitely be like another year and a bit for us to get that deposit. So
you certainly wouldn't be able to buy in the corridor that you looked.
Yeah.
Right. So you wouldn't be able to buy there. You probably would have gone down the rent vesting path, which is then borderless. So you would have to buy in, say, Perth or Queensland, for example, in an affordable market.
The admin of that.
And that's generally, and then you still start paying rent. But you actually want to put down roots as well. So, it has that. It's a real internal tussle for a lot of people going, I want to buy. The deposit becomes a hindrance as well.
Yeah.
Cool. So you've got to the point that you've had a chat to a broker, you've understood your numbers.
Yeah.
And then what happens next?
So,
because people can then get the numbers, and we've done plenty of scenarios for people that just kind of sell into the sunset, and that's it. You've taken that on board, and what do you do next?
Well, like I said, I'm impatient, and I also am an action taker. So our broker said, go and look at properties. Like, you don't have to be ready yet, but just go and have a look. So we went. And we only did a day of viewings, to be fair. But we went and looked at different properties. We went up to DY because we thought, okay, we might be moving up here because there's way more properties up there and they're cheaper. We did that. And I just kept an eye on realestate.com, basically. We did a couple more random viewings. And then Miles inconveniently went to the UK for 6 weeks. And so we both decided, like, okay, well, we'll just wait until you get back. And once you get back, then we'll start looking again. And then that's when our timeline kind of, like, fell out, because it was, by the time he got back, if we started looking again, it would be completely wrong with when our lease ends in our flat. So it was like, okay, we'll just ask. Like, then we're like, right, now we have to talk to the landlord about going on a rolling lease, because we were still like, we want to be able to buy as soon as we see something that we like. So yeah, we were kind of like in that process. At the same time, we started admin with the broker, with like sending all our details, going on the online portal so they could get the process moving to start our pre-approval. So yeah, we were doing that, and yeah, it was kind of happening but not happening, but I was still like, I just can't see a place online and not go. And I'm really nosy as well. Like, I'm so nosy. And so I would be like, I can't see this online and not go and see it. So yeah, Miles went to England and we were like, right, we'll put things on hold. But then obviously I just am not going to do that. So a property came up that was 2 kilometres down the road from where we were living. And Miles was actually, before he left, it had already come up, which is also why we had such a tight time squeeze in the end. But he was going to go and see it one day, but I was working in the office and so I wasn't available, and he just couldn't be bothered, so he didn't go. So then we were like, okay, whatever. So then he went to England, and then I just was looking online and there was nothing else really exciting coming up, and I just thought, I just have to go down. It's down the road. Like, I just have to go down and have a look. So that's what I did.
Yep.
And yeah, I ended up really liking it. Should I carry on?
Plenty of people like a property, and then you got to do something about it.
I know. Yeah, so I really liked it, and I was like, oh, I like this place, and who knows why, because I'm not looking at property like...
Yeah, you're not walking out of the pre-approval in your back pocket, from what I understand at this point.
No, we don't have that at all. Yeah. I don't even know anything really about property except for like what wallpaper I'd like to put on the wall. So I went in and I was like, we have a friend who's very into property, but he's very an analytical mind, and he was like, these are the things you need to consider. And I'm like, thank you for your advice, but I'm going to go on, and if it feels good, then I'm going to like it. Like,
I buy off emotion, not off being rational.
Yeah. So I just liked it. Like, the floorboards were nice. It actually was a 2-bedroom place that they'd done some renovations to and created a 3rd bedroom. And that's like quite big, because we just did not think we'd be able to afford a 3-bedroom. It has made there are compromises. It's made the lounge like a bit darker, but then I'm like instantly like, renovation, what can I do to fix this problem? So having the 3 bedrooms, it being just down the road, like not really having to change our lifestyle that much, which is such a luxury and a privilege. But like, I've got all my friends rent in Manly. I surf in the morning. Just still being close to them. It's a bit further out, but it's flat, so I need to get my bike fixed, which I haven't ridden in a year. But yeah, so that kind of really was like, oh my God, there's a place in the suburb next door.
Tick, tick, tick.
Yeah. And there's some things about it that was like, oh, is this that good? Is it whatever? So I went away. I spoke to Miles. The UK time difference is so annoying. Like, every evening I'm like, are you awake yet? I need to talk to you. So I spoke to him, but I went to the viewing, and I was the only person there because it had already been up for like a couple of weeks. Yeah. Which also makes you feel like, what's wrong with this place? That's
the first thing that goes through your mind, isn't it?
Yeah. But anyway, I was there by myself, didn't take a video of it. So I had to go back. That was a Saturday. The next Wednesday I went back, and I took a video to send to Miles so that he could see it, and he saw it and was like, yeah, I like it. Like, what can we do? Like, what's the next step? And then that's when I think the next day spoke to our broker and said, hey, like, I know that we haven't got very far through this, but I've actually found a place that I like. What can we do about making an offer? And this is something that I learned in the process, actually, because obviously I don't know anything about buying a home. So everything was new. And that's why the book was also super helpful, because I learned all the steps along the way. And I just knew what was coming and what to expect or what things I needed to ask about. So I spoke to the agent and she said, make an offer. And I was like, yeah, we don't have pre-approval and like I can't be bound to this. And she was like, no, like just send me. It's just a verbal offer. It's not like you're not signing anything. And I had got a recommendation for a conveyancer, so I'd contact a conveyancer because what's a conveyancer? Like,
yeah,
I don't know.
To the uninitiated, like, to have a conveyancer and like we have an awkward silence on the phone, I'm like, right, I'll just send you through someone you should contact. Yeah,
I'm like, I've never ever heard that word before. Like, so someone said, oh yeah, you need a conveyancer, and I was like, a what? And then they were like, yeah, they are a lawyer. I was like, why are they called like a property lawyer or something? I don't know. They probably do more.
Professional.
Yeah. So yeah, I was speaking to the conveyancer and she was like, well, you know, do not sign anything until I've read it. And I was like, don't worry, I'm not going to. So I sent an offer in and the place was up on realestate.com. It was 975. Yeah. And I read in your book that some people put false prices on things to get more people through the property. So I was like, well, anyway, I'll just take it at that. So I made an offer just via text, which was weird, but anyway, for 970. So I was like, right, let's see what we can do. It's 975. They wanting to go to auction as well. So I put that out there, rejected, which makes sense now. Yeah. I can see what we did pay for it. And at the same time was like, we really need to get pre-approval. So I think this was happening. Oh, yeah, the other thing was that this was happening over Easter. So Miles is not here. Yeah. I'm like on the phone to so many people. I have my friends staying from Melbourne, and like Melbourne property prices compared to Sydney are different, and they were like, oh my God, what are you doing? Like, we went and looked at the property, but we couldn't get in, so we were just trying to look in the windows, which was hilarious, and neighbours were like, what are these four girls doing? But they were like, oh my God, like, what are you going to offer for it? And so I was talking to them about it. So that offer got rejected on like the 28th, that was the Thursday, and then it was Easter Friday. That week, we're trying to get pre-approval from the bank, but obviously it's a short week. And so the bank's like got a backlog and they're not working 5 days, which is very inconvenient for us. So then it was quite like, oh my God. And then I had Easter, which was really nice because my friends were up. We had like I had a staycation. They had a good holiday. I kind of forgot about it. But you can't actually
ever get your mind off.
Well, I kind of was like, I'm one of those people that when I leave work, like it's gone. Like, I'm not letting go. I'm not taking 2 days to let go of my work when I'm on holiday. It's like I'm out. So I kind of was just like, oh, well, I'm just going to have fun. I'd said to the agent, just let me know what's happening on Tuesday. We'd already had the offer rejected. The Tuesday, I make another offer for $990, conditional on our pre-approval because we still don't have it. And that also gets rejected. Right. So then Miles and I are like, okay, what are we going to do? Should we, like, what's our upper limit? And how much do we want to pay for this place? And a friend said to me, like, well, what are your non-negotiables? And I was like, 2 bedrooms plus, like, I don't know. So we were kind of like, well, the area is really important to us for this place because that's where it is. And, like, it's really good size and it's everything that we kind of need apart from it's funny what you don't see because when I was rewatching the video, I saw that there wasn't a dishwasher. I was like, oh, no. I love dishwashers. Yeah. It's just so funny.
I can't imagine a place without a dishwasher.
I know, because the kitchen's quite small, which is something else we're going to have to do something about, but that's okay. And I said to my mum, but there's no dishwasher. And she was like, there's only 2 of you. How many dishes do you have? And, like, your dad and I don't use a dishwasher. And I'm like, Mum, Dad washes all the dishes. Like, you don't wash the dishes. So I think you probably have a different opinion about this. So, but there were things in the video that I was like, oh, actually, there's hardly any kitchen cupboards. So I'm like, now I'm questioning. Something that I also did was I took a friend, shout out to Maddie Watt, and he came and viewed the property with me just because I'm not taking my girlfriends. Like, we're all going to say, oh, the floorboards are nice, so we were just going to pop around.
No skin in the game. Yes.
Yeah. And so he came in and said, yeah, like, I can see you guys living there. There's no massive cons to it. And so that made me feel a bit better. That whole, like, speaking of emotion, like that whole kind of 2-week period with Easter in between where I had a break, but it was like I couldn't, when you are about to you have to get up early for a flight and you wake up like every hour because you think you've missed your alarm. I was doing that, but I was like dreaming about buying property. I was dreaming about admin, and I was waking up and I was so tired, and I'm a really good sleeper. So I was like, what is going on? But I was just so unsure, and I think I would have been more sure if Miles had been in the country and had seen the place, because I thought, oh my God, this is a lot of money. Like, we are really, like, he hasn't seen this. This is me.
It's a big responsibility for one person to bear on their own, isn't it?
Yeah. So that was all happening, and then so that second offer got rejected, and we said, okay, what are we going to pay for this? And our borrowing capacity was, because we're both, when we went to speak to the mortgage broker, we were both on about 120K a year. And so our borrowing capacity is 1.2 million. But we looked at the numbers for if we did borrow 1.2 million, and the monthly repayments, like, that was just way too much of a stretch for us. And we wouldn't have enjoyed our life. Like, we wanted to be able to pay comfortably, and then also, like, still be able to go on holiday or still be able to pay for our car, Polly, to get fixed because her brakes are squeaky, like those sorts of things.
That is every home buyer's 100%. They say that. It's like, I want the house and the mortgage, but I don't want to give up my lifestyle. And there's a word for it. It's house poor, which is, I've got the house, but we feel poor.
Yeah. And I think it's a very, like, I mean, had no money. Like, I had no money at uni. I had no money saving to go overseas. I had no money when I had my business failed. But, like, I feel like it's kind of also maybe like a millennial and below thing, is we're like, we love our luxuries, and like, we're not giving up our bloody coffee, and we're not giving up going on holiday, even if it takes like 6 months longer to save for a deposit. Like, I'm not going to hate my life and not have any fun just to like save and save and save. I'm not sure if that's the right way to do it, but at least we're enjoying.
You make peace with your decisions.
Yeah.
Our parents might say otherwise.
Oh my God, yeah.
They're all delayed gratification. Give it up. Instant coffee at home. And we're like, I don't know, I can't give up this. And statistically, Australians are not giving up their cup of coffee, even in the cost of living crisis. Like, that is the one thing that we're not giving up.
Yeah, but also when you add up like the coffee amounts compared to like other things you could, like, I'd rather buy coffee and then just not buy like a jacket or something when I've got like 5 jackets already.
So what you've gone through is what I call Hell Week for a lot of people. The SEALs, I think, go through it, or Navy, and then home buyers go through it, which is found a place, trying to get my loan approved, and then trying to make the contract to sale come through, do your due diligence, and then sweating on this approval from a bank as well. So take me through the negotiations. You get into this final stage of negotiations.
Yes.
How do you close this out? Because again, this is the first time you've done it.
Yeah.
You haven't made offers on properties before.
Yeah.
So you're practicing in real life.
Yeah.
How does this go down?
Yeah, hopefully I've done it right when I tell you.
We're successful, so you've done something right.
Yeah. So we decided that we would offer $1 million, and that was it, because we'd offered $990. And the agent came back and said, they're probably looking for more like $1,050,000, but previously had said that $1 million they would be in selling mode.
Okay.
So,
and mind you, we've started with a listed price at $975.
I know.
So every time we take listed price, ignore that.
Yeah.
Because that's your starting point. That's certainly not your end point.
Yeah. It was. Yeah. I was like, so I'm also. Can get a little bit annoyed at things, and I was starting to be like, what?
What's the point of a listed price?
Yeah. And so anyway, we said, right, we'll offer $1 million and that's it. Like, we're not paying any more. And I've really got a mindset that, like, whatever will be, will be. Like, if it works out, it works out. If it doesn't, something better is going to happen. And I'll look back and think, oh, thank God that one didn't work out. Yeah. So, and by that stage, I had been so stressed about it. It wasn't like the first time I'd seen the property when I was like, oh, this place is amazing. I was like, this place is stressful. So we offered $1 million and did that by text again because we still didn't have pre-approval. Yeah. And then that day it got rejected. And I'd said to the agent, like, we're not doing any more. Like, we're not paying any more for that. There was another guy who had actually met at a viewing and he was really nice and he was looking at an investment property. And I was like, can you just tell them that we're really nice people and we're going to live in this place and we're going to love it and we're going to decorate it and, like, yeah, all that kind of stuff. Like, please, sob story. So, yeah, they were kind of waiting to see what this other guy was going to do. And so they said no. And that was, like, 2 weeks of, like, back and forth stress, like, obviously with Easter in between. So, and they said, well, they're really wanting that the poor agents, the vendors are now wanting $1,075,000, but they'll meet you in the middle at like $1,025,000. And I was like, I'm sorry, but that's not meeting in the middle because you started at 975 and then you've made up $1,050,000 and then you made up $1,075,000 and then you're saying you'll drop back down to over $1 million for us to meet in the middle. I was like, you just made that middle up. Like, this is not the middle. So I was like, look, that's it. We're not offering any more. Like, thanks so much for your help. But, like, let me know if any other 2-bedroom properties in the area come up. I was, like, a little bit upset, but I think I was so tired. I was, like, one of those things where I was like, I really need to cry. So I was just like, I cried a little bit. And then I was like, oh, well, moving on. So I was back on realestate.com, like, half an hour later. And I think I put on either Love on the Spectrum or Queer Eye, which are just such feel-good programs. So I was like, this is going to heal me. And I was on realestate.com. I, like, found new properties to view. I think this was a Wednesday. And then I met my friends for breakfast the next day and I just had, like, an absolute whinge session about, like, that's $1 million. Like, there's a lot of money. That's a lot of money for us. It's a lot of money for a loan. And, like, those people do not deserve our $1 million for stuffing me around, like, ran. Then I said, probably I'm, like, turning this around and they're going to come back and we're going to give them $1 million after I was saying they don't deserve it. So I went to work and then at, like, 10 a.m. the agent called me and said, they've accepted your offer of $1 million. Wow. And I was like, what? I was shocked because I'd let it go. Yeah. I'd let it go after looking at new properties and whinging about it or wanting to.
And also having a good cry because there's all this research, especially when I've done the book, there is no greater stress point at that point, I think, besides organising a wedding, but for a couple or someone going through a home buying journey, it emotionally breaks people.
Yeah, it was like so much like, and
because
so
much
much
invested in
work.
Yeah.
Like if it probably happened like a week or two before that, I would have been like, yeah, whatever, it didn't work out. But because I'd gone back and forth and at the same time was just trying to get the pre-approval.
Yeah.
So the offer gets accepted. We still don't have pre-approval.
Yeah.
So now I'm really like this, like we need to get this.
Absolutely.
And our broker was doing like the very best she could. Like she was working so hard for us and her assistant was doing so much as well. And they were in contact with us all the time and super helpful, like really good. It was just like what was happening behind the scenes with the bank. I feel like she must have been on the phone to the bank. Like, so
this scenario is so common. And I'll say this every time to a new client. I'm like, we're having a chat now. All it takes is one listing to come up and this entire conversation changes. We go from being super passive to being extremely active.
Yeah.
And it's like the horse has gone before the cart.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
It's like, doesn't matter how many times you tell it to people, get pre-approved, you won't take any action until you effectively find the property because you feel like you've got all the time in the world. bang, listing comes up.
Yeah.
Everything changes. Now we're on the back foot. And that's why generally it becomes even more stressful because the finances aren't in order. And there's no way the broker telling you, hey, mate, we've got this loan. It's lip service at that point. There's no way you're believing them going, the loan. I want to hear it from a bank.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like because like I said, we could borrow 1.2 and so we were only going for like 89999 whatever, nearly 900. And so she's like, this is well within your borrowing capacity, so it should be absolutely fine with the bank. But you're right, you need the yes, you're pre-approved.
Correct.
So we got the offer accepted. I was like, what? So then, because I also thought, I'll just have a break from this house admin because, oh my God.
It's a full-time gig.
Yeah, it is.
We spoke about that week when you're trying to organise inspections, valuations, contract to sale negotiations, speaking to the agent, and your broker, like that has to become your main focus. So when someone's working, someone's got to run point with it.
Oh my God.
If you're solo, then that's your focus. If you're in a relationship, someone needs to take the lead on it, which means that becomes their priority and focus because this is time sensitive.
Oh my God, yeah. And it's really pressured in terms of like the agents like pushy. Pushy. And like that's just their job.
Yeah, because it's gone the other way. You've gone from chasing the agent to now the agent chasing you. So the dynamic shifts completely. I'll say the hunter's now become the hunted.
Yeah.
And you're going, I was chasing you, now you're chasing me. And it feels like, are we doing the right thing? And so there's no time to even think because you're going so quickly. Yeah. And the conveyancer's coming at you, the broker's coming at you, the real estate agent's coming at you. And it's like, there's a lot, especially the first time around, to take that in and go, we're trying to enjoy this, but this is a lot of high pressure, high stakes with a lot of zeros attached to it as well, right?
Yes. Yeah, totally. And so, I was like kind of trying to sort all that out. And the other thing that you need to do, because we're buying an apartment, is read the strata report, which is, my God, it's boring.
Boring and, if
so
you have no idea what you're looking for.
Yeah, I know.
You could be reading gibberish, mate.
And I read like pages and pages at the start, which after I'd finished, I realised were just like general strata stuff and it had nothing to do with our property. And I was like, oh my God. So I'm trying to read these strata reports. I'm like signing things with the conveyancer. I'm working out stuff with our broker. I'm talking to the agent who's like, what are we doing? And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I one day, like I track all my hours because I work across different organisations, and one day I did 2.5 hours of my actual job and the rest of it. And that was that day of like, I think it was that day or it was another day before that of just pure admin at work. So it's quite a lot. So anyway, luckily we got our pre-approval the day that our offer got accepted. It came through. So that was like, okay, thank goodness. And then, it's like, oh, your offer's accepted. We need the deposit. It's like, I'm sorry. Like, hold your horses. We have, like, Miles is in the UK. So, like, he's asleep. And so he's asleep and all this is happening. So every day I would talk to him and be like, this is what's happening. You know, we're going to make a decision about this. And so I text him and said, like, as soon as you wake up, can you please call me? And with the time difference at that stage, because we hadn't changed daylight savings and all that kind of stuff there and here, it was like an 11-hour difference. So, like, I'm finishing my work day and he's waking up, and so I call him and I'm like, our offer got accepted. He's like, what? Because he's like had his day, gone to bed, and then I'm like, we need to get into action. Like, because his money he needs to move his money. I need to move my money. Actually, a really good tip that was in the book that you put was calling the bank and telling them to increase your transfer limit, which I would never have thought of. So I had already done that.
It's amazing how often that trips people up.
Yeah. I've had that before just with, like, I was managing a touch rugby team and I had to pay for all the accommodation and it was like denied. It's like, oh my God. So I called the bank during the day, there's another piece of admin, and said, can you please increase the limit so I can, like, move basically most of my money out of my account? And then I also asked them about Miles because he's with the same bank. So I was like, what can I do about my partner? And they gave me a number that he could call from the UK to get in touch with them. So I was like, by the way, he's overseas. So like, can he call you?
That doesn't sound suspicious at all to a bank.
I know. Yeah, so we got all that sorted, and then they were really like wanting the money that day, but I don't know what happened. Something else happened and it just didn't go through, and they had to wait till the next day. But yeah, like real high pressure. Like it was like, sorry, like Miles is asleep, can't do anything. And
we
the
have
agent's
these
like,
scenarios where it's like parents are giving money to the kids, and the parents have to shift that money from somewhere else as well. And
totally.
you're hurting cats at that point, trying to get money shifted around, and large sums of money, which means you're sweating bullets by that point. Going, we've got the account details right. You know, so many horror stories about money's going to the wrong trust accounts, or by that stage it's email hijackings where deposits have been lost through conveyance accounts. So this is where you feel like you hear all the horror stories, but you've really got to. It almost happens, those things in slow motion. Like you've got to kind of see this happening in slow motion, going, okay, ring the solicitor or the conveyancer, confirm the trust account, make sure triple check, and you need to be organised. There's just no way to sugarcoat. You have to be organised. You have to have a good team around you, and that's that level of responsiveness. And I think you said you got to take action. Yeah, you got to go straight to action mode.
Totally. So we ended up getting that. Like, obviously, we got that money together and paid the deposit. But, the agent's like that day was saying, because it's all electronic now, like, you can be doing it at 11 p.m. And I'm like, lady, I go to bed at 9:30. Like, this is not happening at 11 p.m. I'm not in this panic transferring all this money. So we did it the next day, which was a Friday. And then we're like, oh, my God, we've bought a property. Miles has never been inside it. And then you're kind of like, oh, did that really happen? Because the next week I got in touch with the conveyancer again and the broker. I'm like, hey, what do you need from me? And they're like, no, you can just relax for a little bit because there's stuff happening in the behind the scenes. And our conveyancer says, as it gets closer to the settlement date, I'll be back in touch with you and I'll get everything that we need to get moving so that you settle. And I'm like...
You got PTSD from the previous week. That's exactly what happens. It's like peak week.
Yeah.
Everyone's coming at you and it's like, okay, it goes silent the next week. There's nothing to see here. The bank's working on approval. Yeah. Solicitors, conveyancers done their work, and you're like, last week was such a kerfuffle and this week is zero to do.
Yeah. Which is kind of nice, but also it actually makes... Because all my friends were like, homeowner, how do you feel? And I'm like... I just feel like it's not real because maybe if they'd said, yes, you've got it, and then I went back into the property and I was like, oh, this is ours. But we haven't been back. I haven't seen it in a month now, like a month.
You get a very small window for your pre-settlement inspection, and that stage is pretty much in and out. Yeah. So you don't even get much time. So, if you're listening and you're like, especially for people that want to come in and maybe do some work to the property, or get measurements, for example, you've got to ask for access. So that's something that's got to be negotiated or be very open about, hey, but we may want to get access because I know even for us, when we moved once, our fridge didn't even fit. And so just small things like that where you're like, I didn't even think that'd be a problem. Where's a dishwasher or a dryer going to go? And there's small things like that where or the washing machine and you're like, this would catch you out, especially on moving day. It's,
So luckily for us, we're moving from a smaller apartment to a bigger place so that we actually don't have enough furniture. But
good problem to have.
Yeah, I know for me, Facebook Marketplace, hello. But the agent said you can contact me and come in to measure. Beautiful. If you want, but I've got nothing to measure. What I'm going to be measuring. The fridge isn't it's just an open space, so that's fine. Yeah. We know all our furniture's going to fit in. It's funny. We'll do our pre-inspection next week and we get our keys next week and that'll be the first time Miles steps inside. And, we got the bubbles sent to us from the agent and we're going to celebrate when we're there because...
What's the saying? Champagne's for the podium. So, you don't pop it too early.
Yeah, and it just feels like it still doesn't feel like it's ours. And actually, today we had people coming to view our current flat to take on the new lease. And just knowing that somebody else is moving in, I'm like, oh, I'm leaving. Like, oh, this is happening. Like, we've booked movers now, which is good, but it's still like, I think it's not going to feel real until we're in there. And then it's always just feels like, you know, it's a new area. You don't know what the neighbours are like. I don't know what, like, I went there so many times though. Like I went for a run early in the morning down there so to see what it was like when it was still a bit dark, which is not a good idea because it's like got trees all around it. And then we had all that rain in Sydney not that long ago, and I drove down because I was like, what if there's a flood risk here? Like I was like, I need to check these things, and now I've kind of just let it go, and I've already been to the local cafe, so I know that where I'm going to get my coffee.
That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
Get your route right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you started packing it?
No.
Yeah.
And really need to because we get the keys. Because, like, movers are expensive.
Movers are expensive. Let me just I might have touched on this in the book. I hope I did. The amount of times that people you leave packing to the last minute, right? Because obviously you still need to live. You still need your clothes, you still need your cutlery, you need your homewares. The best thing that we ever did was for our removalists to come in and pack everything like 2 days before. Yeah. And granted, I had 2 very small babies at that time when we moved. Yeah. But let me tell you, if anyone's thinking about moving, the best money you'll spend. You spend all this money. You spend like $1 million on a house. Yeah. We can afford to spend a few extra $100 on a removalist, and people cut this corner and they sitting there at midnight packing boxes. Yeah, yeah. What are you doing?
I know.
Get a removalist to come in. These guys come in with the muscles. They pack boxes. They label the boxes. They bubble wrap all our cutlery. They don't break a damn thing. Yeah. They pack it, and then when they get to the new house, they put it in the right spots. And they set up the beds even. I was like, this is worth every single dollar. Yeah. For having that ability just to kind of plug and play. So if that's a small thing, small thing, but it goes a long way.
Yeah, we're like quite lucky because we get our keys next Wednesday, which is the 15th, and then we don't have to be out of our current apartment. Our lease, all the timing worked out. Our lease ends on the 31st of May, which was just like landed in our laps, basically. So we've got all that time. So what
Which
we're going to...
is so important. Again, people like, my lease ends on this day, then my settlement ends on the same day. So
oh my God.
We're talking about trying to reduce stress and you're just adding to it. Again, things... And the other part is you're settling on a Wednesday. Can I just say, like, credit to you, because everyone settles on a Friday. We're like, why would you want to settle on a Friday afternoon? Yeah. If anything goes wrong, that you're buggered for the whole week, and you got removalists booked on the Friday afternoon that you can't shift and move. Yeah. Whereas Wednesday is so much easier because it's generally everyone's at work or whatever, so getting in and out of the access like lift or whatever you've got becomes easy because it's midweek. And getting a removalist is even easier because everyone books settles on Friday. So if you're listening, negotiate and kind of settle midweek. Yeah. You'll thank yourself later for it.
Yeah, I cannot take any of the credit for that because our vendors, the people we're buying off, also it's funny calling them vendors. It's like anyway. They're buying another property at the same time, so they asked us to move the settlement day forward by 2 days, which has worked out quite well. And we were like, yeah, whatever, we don't care. So we're gonna like do a bit of moving ourselves, and then we've got movers coming in to do the big things. But when we move to Australia, in the UK, everything's furnished. So when we moved to Australia, we were like, oh, nothing, this whole apartment's empty, and so we had to buy all our furniture, which we did slowly. And honestly, like moving the one couch up, we're on the 3rd floor and there's no lift, moving one couch up, which I didn't even do that much for because our neighbour helped us. And after doing that kind of slow moving, I was like, there's absolutely no way we are ever moving this furniture out of this house. Like we will pay. We'll be able to do like a bit ourselves. And then, so we've got that weekend of the 18th, 19th, and then I go to Canberra for work for a week, which is very inconvenient. But this whole thing's been terribly timed anyway.
It'll never be a perfect time, right? Because here's the thing. Miles comes back in 6 weeks' time. Properties have gone up in the meantime. Well, there's less on the market.
There's way less on the market now than there was.
Yeah.
Because I'm still looking. But also my neighbour, who he's great, lovely. They're like selling their place underneath us. And he was like, lots of people feel buyer's remorse. And I'm like getting the opposite because I'm going on realestate.com just for like a nosy once a week. And I'm like, nah, our place is better than that.
Yeah, you still do it. I still do it with ours. I'm like, would I have bought anything else? And buyer's remorse, but then it's also whatever the opposite of that is going, you're so grateful because I'm like, I'm glad I bought that one because if I kept waiting, nothing would have come out and ticked my boxes.
Yeah, totally. I think maybe buyer's smugness, which is not very nice. But and I thought, well, those are in DY and we don't want to have to go up there a bit further and have a longer commute. And also now that what happened with our property going from 975 to 1,075,000 for $1 million, I'm looking at those property prices and I'm thinking, well, I could look at that and think, oh, we could have saved $150K if we get that apartment. But then I'm like, would we have? Because who knows what it would have actually sold.
Never have sold,
Yeah. And also we avoided going to auction, which you've got a really good chapter about auctions. And I was reading it like, okay, like psych yourself up for this. And in the end, it actually was quite a good card to play when they rejected our $1 million offer, because I was like, because the auction was 2 days from then. So I was like, sweet as, see you on Friday, I'll be at the auction and we'll see how much you get for it. We'll see what your reserve is. And if it's more than $1 million, then I'm not going to bid on it. But if it's less and you don't get anything, well, guess who you're dealing with again? It's me.
This is it, yeah. And we're always trying to say, stack the odds in your favor a little bit. And that's exactly what happens where you go, if you don't have that desperate energy, you kind of say, look, this is our offer and you got to be willing to walk away. You still got to be willing to lose it at that point. And you kind of made peace with that versus people that have that desperate energy. And that's what generally happens. Imagine this search had gone for 6-9 months. Yeah. By that stage, it's generally where you see people just go, I just need this pain to be over and they'll just pay that silly number. And you're like, how come that property sold for that much? Yeah. That doesn't make any sense. I usually say it's a frustrated buyer that's just paid well and truly over to make the pain go away. And it's real credit to you.
Yeah, thanks.
If you were to give advice to anyone that was in your shoes, I'd say you're renting, saving, and you're trying to get into the market, what would be your little bit of advice to someone that's in that predicament that you were in?
So my advice is definitely talk to a broker straight away. I've got friends.
This is unscripted, by the way.
Yeah, don't talk to him, just talk to a broker.
Exactly. There's 18,000 brokers in Australia, mate. Find a great one.
Well, and I think I've got friends who are probably going to be ready to buy next year, and I put them in touch with our broker and they've had a conversation with her because I'm like, the most helpful thing that we got was all those numbers. Yeah. Like, this is how much you can borrow. This is how much deposit you'll need for this type of these property ranges. This is how much your repayments will be across the month. And also knowing, because I didn't talk about this, but stamp duty. That's
the killer.
You got to give the cash. Luckily, thank you for being generous, Australia, but New Zealanders can access the first home buyer's assistance, but at a property of $1 million, there's no chance we're getting any of that. But we also could see, if we aimed to buy a property under this amount, we'd get, a massive reduction in the stamp duty, which is so important because you need your deposit, but then, we are paying at that property price $40K of stamp duty, which is extra on your deposit because you need to pay it. You just need to pay it. It's not going on your loan or anything. So for other people to see with the broker to say okay, well, if you bought under 800K, this is how much you'd get off with this assistance if you're a first home buyer, of course. And you can really look at okay, so we actually need the cash that we need in our bank is the deposit plus this, plus whatever, how many thousand for a conveyancer, plus, it's those kind of amounts that you get to see. So that is super helpful. And I think it's also helpful as a saver to have, because you can think, because I used to think I can never save enough for a deposit or we're never going to be able to afford a house, or not a house. I always say we bought a house, but we bought an apartment. But we bought a home. We bought a home. Right, So and that actually being this is the amount we need. It gives you a goal, and having like sometimes that can be a bit like overwhelming if you're quite far away from it, but at least you know, like, this is how much I really need to save each month or with each paycheck, and just start working towards that instead of it just being, because for me it was just this big, like, a gazillion dollars, like no concept of the amount of money and all that kind of stuff. So speak to a broker like as soon as you're just even thinking about it, so that you can get a really good idea about how much you can borrow and how much you're going to need and what that looks like. And then you've got way more guidance about where you can look. Like I said, I was looking in bloody Orange, and I could have just been looking down the road because I just thought we couldn't afford in the area we were in. Definitely, start saving, obviously. Read your book. That was so helpful.
Thank you.
It was so helpful. And, actually it was the universe that just gave it to me, because I was working at the library one day and I just walked past their display and they had it on display. And I thought,
I feel like I've made it when I've gone into a library.
Yeah, I know, Manly Library, thank you. And I thought, I need a home loan, and that's got a nice cover. So I looked at it and I sent a picture to Miles and I said, I've got this book, I'll let you know what I learn. Yeah. And then all I was doing was just like spouting stuff out from the book, because it was, and also I think what's really good about it is that you're super encouraging, super honest, but kind of honest in like don't be down on yourself. Like, you can do this, get up, get yourself sorted. And then also just explaining, like, it's all of the stuff in little pieces isn't that hard to understand, but all together with everything you need to know is like totally swamping.
Oh, mate. People go, tell me what needs to happen next. I'm like, if I told you, there's like probably 66 steps in our process from when someone comes in at the start. It's like, if I told this all to you, there's no way you'd remember all of it. Yeah. You'd feel overwhelmed. That's going to set you far backwards. I'm like, all you need to know is the next step, the next step, the next step, and one step will lead to the next. And you put one foot in front of the other, and that's exactly it. So knowing all the steps isn't going to solve the home ownership journey. It's going, you just need to know the next one, be prepared. Yeah. Otherwise, it's going to feel like a juggernaut.
And that's what I thought because I read the whole book, because it's actually also quite easy to read, like it's not too big. And so then I read the whole book, but then I was like, I'm going to come back to this when I get to that stage. But also, obviously, we were going through like pre-approval panic. And so I was like, okay, well, I know what I need to prepare for once we get pre-approval. Like, for me, just knowing that next, because I like to plan things, I was like, I know that next step. That was super helpful. What else would I say? Just go and look. Just go and look at places in the area that you want. Like my friends who I mentioned who want to buy next year, they might be moving to the inner west, and they went and looked at suburbs like a couple of weekends ago just to see, is this a place where we'd like to live? Should we actually start seriously looking at prices around here? So I would say just go and look at properties. And I know people are like, look at Heaps, and we obviously didn't look at Heaps, and then we got the first place we offered, which isn't that common. But it was helpful just going into lots of we saw 5 apartments in one day. We're like, okay, now we're really getting a good idea about what's important, what's too small, what's too old, all that kind of stuff. That was really helpful for us. And once you feel like, okay, I've got the deposit, and like I said, just buy what you can buy when you can buy it. Once you've got your deposit, get started on the pre-approval and don't make the same mistake.
That's the part where I owe you a small paycheck to, because now you're speaking our language. Going, get pre-approved. It will save you energy and stress. But I think it's important to do it. But when you find it probably becomes urgent, and that's where that stress just goes up again. And you're like, if we just did it when it was important rather than urgent, you could avoid a few grey hairs.
And I think something that our broker also said to us was there are different ways you can get pre-approval, and some of it is just online submission, and it's AI, and they'll tick you off. But she's like, that's not that safe if you're actually serious about buying, because they might say, you've got pre-approval for this, but then when you go to make an offer on a property, they're going to look in more detail and not actually give you pre-approval. So it's better to get the solid pre-approval from a good lender, and then this is definitely what we can offer, and we're not going above that, and we're just like sticking to that. So that I think that was also really helpful. It took longer. Obviously, we could have like within a day got our pre-approval if it was through like the AI, whatever, like online submission. But she's like,
can't trust it.
It's not. Yeah. So it took longer, but it was worth it. So start before, and also maybe just don't be impatient. Well, it worked out for me, didn't it? Like, but like
you're like a cat, mate. You land on your feet. So
exactly. Yeah.
Tahirih, I want to say thank you so much. Like I said, unscripted. You reached out and said this is a story that needs to be told. So I want to say thank you very much for showing up and sharing your tale. Obviously, you bare your soul about what you went through, but you're an open book, and that's what I loved about you and your journey. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. This is an episode for someone that's looking to get into the property market. So if you know someone, share the link to this episode. Like we said, we want to be into more people's ears, getting them confident, getting them clarity and certainty about how to get into the property market. And this episode's a real banger. So thank you, mate. Appreciate it. If you've loved it, reach out. And if you want a copy of the book, so if you've listened to it and you want a copy of the book, just drop us a message and we'll tell you how to get a copy of the book into your hands as well. That's a wrap for another episode of the Australian Property Investment Podcast. Thanks very much. Beautiful.